The galaxy was vast and cold, its darkness, stretching far beyond the reach of any ship or mind. Civilizations rose and fell in the blink of an eye, drifting across stars that had burned for millennia, their stories whispered only in the dust of time. Yet among the endless sea of stars, something stirred, a signal that pierced through the deep silence of the universe. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, a mere ripple in the cosmic ocean. But to those who had the means to hear it, it was as if the fabric of reality itself had been torn open. This signal carried a message, ancient and cryptic, a call that seemed to emanate from nowhere yet everywhere, its source hidden deep within a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a place lost to all records and maps for centuries. And yet here, it was the message it carried was simple and chilling at the same time, an invitation to all those who considered themselves worthy to come and bear witness to the power of an ancient race, the creators of untold technologies capable of altering the very laws of nature itself. It promised knowledge beyond comprehension, and a power that could reshape the galaxy for those who dared to answer the call. To most, it was a mystery, an enigma that would be left to the archives. But to others it was a temptation, a chance to wield the power of gods across the stars and claim dominion over all that existed. And so the race began. The message spread like wildfire through the galaxy, reaching every corner of known space. Those with the power to respond quickly made their moves. The most advanced civilizations among the stars began mobilizing fleets and preparing expeditions. Resources were pooled in haste, and the best minds of entire species were dedicated to unlocking the mystery of the signal, to decipher the ancient coordinates hidden within the transmission. Many of these civilizations had once been great empires, their names spoken in awe by generations of sentience, their technology unrivaled. But all knew that this invitation was something different. It was not just a call for those who were the strongest or the most cunning. It was a challenge to all who heard it to prove their worth, to claim the legacy of a race so old and so powerful that even the most advanced minds struggled to comprehend their existence. But there was one species that had yet to make its mark on the galaxy, one that was still a newcomer among the stars. They were young and untested, but they were bold and unyielding. Their ships were not the most advanced, their technology not the most refined, but what they lacked in age they made up for in determination and spirit. Humanity had only recently reached the stars, a mere speck in the vastness of the universe, yet here they were answering the call to something far greater than themselves. Without hesitation or doubt, they too began their preparations. They did not wait for permission from the Galactic Council or request a seat at the table with the great powers of the universe. Humanity had always been known for its stubbornness, its refusal to bow to any authority. It was this very nature that would set them apart in this great contest. While the great empires scrambled to assemble their greatest fleets, humanity focused on something different. They did not believe they had to play by the same rules as the others. Instead, they worked in secret, quietly gathering what little resources they had and building ships that were small but fast, sleek but powerful. Their crews were not made up of seasoned war veterans or scholars from ancient universities. No, they were ordinary people, the children of Earth, who had looked to the stars and decided to reach out and touch them. Humanity was about to prove something to the galaxy, something that would resonate in the minds of every other race that heard it. They would show that it was not always the oldest or the most powerful who held the greatest potential. It was the ones who refused to be cowed, the ones who refused to let their size or history define their place among the stars. Humanity would answer the call not as a request, but as a challenge to every other species in the galaxy. They would prove that sometimes the greatest power came from the most unexpected of sources. And so, with their ships fueled and ready, humanity set course for the unknown, a journey that would take them to the farthest reaches of space, where the secrets of the ancients lay waiting for whoever could claim them. The stars stretched out before them, an endless sea of blackness, and like the ship's engines hummed steadily as humanity's fleet sped through the cold vacuum of space. Their vessels, small but efficient, each one carrying a crew of ordinary people eager to prove themselves to the galaxy. They had left Earth behind with nothing more than determination and hope in their hearts. As they traveled further from their home, they passed through systems where no human had set foot before, planets teeming with strange life and unfamiliar beauty worlds, where the suns burned bright, and clothes where the air was thick with the unknown, yet none of that mattered to those aboard the ships. They had a singular goal: to reach the ancient world, where the signal had originated. They knew little about what they would find when they arrived, only that they had to be the first to claim the prize before any of the more established powers could lay claim to it. For the species that had already arrived, the situation was much different. They had been the first to hear the call, and now they watched from their grand fleets as humanity made its approach to the long-lost planet. The alien ships gleamed under the light of distant stars, massive and imposing, their hulls marked with the emblems of civilizations that had been around for millennia. They had arrived with great fanfare, with hundreds of ships and legions of soldiers and scientists eager to uncover the secrets of the ancient race. Each fleet was led by representatives of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, each hoping to claim the legendary technology said to reside in the depths of the planet's ruins. But as the human ships neared the system, something strange began to happen. They passed unnoticed by the massive alien fleets. Their smaller vessels allowed them to slip through the cracks between the mighty warships and into the system without being detected. At first, their presence was nothing more than a blip on the radar to the others. As humanity arrived at the ancient planet, they quickly moved into orbit. It was as if the silence of the universe had given way to the hum of their ships. The planet itself was a shadow against the stars, a massive world of dust and broken stone, its surface scarred by time and neglect. Its once beautiful cities now reduced to crumbling ruins. The air was thin and the landscape barren, but there was a strange power that lingered there in the atmosphere, an energy that resonated from the very core of the planet itself. Though the world had been abandoned for eons, it still thrummed with potential, a kind of energy that could ignite entire civilizations or destroy them entirely. Humanity wasted no time. They began to deploy their small teams onto the surface, descending from their ships in agile dropships equipped with advanced scanners and excavation tools. With each landing, they uncovered more evidence of the ancient race's presence, hidden deep beneath the surface. Colossal structures buried in the dust and forgotten technologies that defied logic. Humanity's crews worked tirelessly to dig through the wreckage, pulling out what little they could find. These early discoveries sent ripples of excitement throughout the fleet, but the true nature of the planet's power remained elusive. No one had figured out how to unlock it, not yet. Meanwhile, the larger alien fleets watched from their positions far above the planet's atmosphere, skeptical of humanity's sudden arrival. At first, they thought it a mere fluke, an unimportant distraction, but soon they began to realize that humans were making progress. Where they had stalled, their systems and technology, far from perfect, were allowing them to adapt quickly to the environment and begin unearthing relics that the older species had failed to uncover in centuries. It didn't take long for those with more power to grow. Uneasy whispers spread through the ranks of the great fleets, murmurs of suspicion and frustration at the sight of the humans moving faster than expected. The alien civilizations had more advanced ships and technologies. Their fleets could dominate any single human vessel with ease. But what they lacked was the hunger of a young species, the kind of fire that could drive them to succeed against impossible odds. The humans didn't know what they were doing, but they were making it work. They were unafraid to experiment and to fail, to try things others would not consider, and it was this that made them dangerous. As humanity dug deeper into the planet's surface and unlocked the first pieces of ancient technology, the aliens began to realize that they might be facing something they had not anticipated, something far more dangerous than a few young upstarts eager to prove themselves in a galaxy full of giants. Humanity continued to explore the ancient planet with a relentless drive that seemed to defy all expectations. While the alien fleets above them exchanged wary glances, their officers and scientists were beginning to recognize something they had missed. Earlier, humanity was not simply scavenging from the ruins. They were actively learning and adapting. Their tech was primitive compared to the more established empires, but they were using it in ways that even the most advanced species hadn't thought of. Their engineers had already begun to reverse engineer the first relics they uncovered, integrating them into their ships and tools. As if they had been doing it for centuries, their breakthroughs were coming faster than anyone could keep up with. and this made the other species uneasy. They watched with growing frustration as humanity unlocked new technologies at an alarming rate. Each discovery seemed to hold a piece of the puzzle, and the humans were putting it together piece by piece with an almost reckless abandon. The largest fleets of the galaxy hovered above the planet like silent titans, unsure of how to proceed. They had expected a slow crawl into the secrets of the ancients, a drawn-out process of discovery and study. Instead, they found themselves playing catch-up every time they moved forward. Humanity was already there. The aliens had never been faced with such a direct challenge before. They had seen species rise and fall, but never had they encountered one so young and yet so determined. Every attempt to slow humanity's progress was met with resistance. The human crews pushed forward unrelenting, driven by the belief that this was their moment, their only shot at claiming something far greater than themselves. They did not have centuries of history or a vast fleet to back them up, but what they did have was the will to survive and to thrive in a way that no other species seemed to understand. As the days turned into weeks, humanity's progress accelerated. They didn't just uncover technology, they started to understand it. They began making modifications, tweaking the ancient machines, and unlocking their true potential. Even in the face of opposition from the other species, the humans didn't hesitate to take risks. They began designing their own weapons, based on the alien technology, adapting them in ways that made their ships faster, more maneuverable, and deadly. The once small human fleet grew in power quickly, and with it came the whispers of doubt among the other species. How had humanity done this so quickly? How were they learning at such an astonishing rate? The alien leaders gathered in secret within their flagships, their faces cold and calculating. They had never expected this level of ingenuity from a species so young. They had underestimated humanity, assuming they were little more than another species plying for scraps from the table of the galaxy's true powers. But now it was clear that humanity had something they hadn't accounted for: a raw and untapped potential, the kind of drive that could push them beyond the limits of their own understanding. But it wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about something deeper, something the humans had discovered within themselves during their long journey across the stars. They had learned to innovate out of necessity. They had learned to adapt because their very survival depended on it. The other species had never faced the kind of desperation that humanity had endured in their short history. They had been pushed to the edge time and again, and each time they had fought their way back stronger than before. It was this hunger, this fierce need to prove their worth to the galaxy that gave them the edge over their more established counterparts. They had no choice but to push forward, to innovate, to fight for their place among the stars. And so humanity's fleet pressed on beneath the aliens' watchful gaze, their ships now equipped with alien tech outmatching anything their rivals had expected. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and yet the true test had not yet arrived. Humanity had proven they could survive in the ruins of the ancients, but they had yet to face the greatest challenge of all. The question of whether they were truly worthy to inherit the power of the long-lost race would soon be answered, and the entire galaxy was watching, waiting to see what the humans would do next. Humanity's progress had become a source of fascination and anxiety across the galaxy. Their ships now hummed with the power of ancient technology. As they uncovered more of the planet's buried secrets, the alien fleets hovered silently above the world, watching with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. They had all but expected humanity to stall, but now they were starting to realize that the humans were far more than they had initially given credit for. With each passing day, the humans unearthed more ruins, vast underground complexes that seemed to stretch for miles beneath the surface of the planet. Each new discovery brought them closer to unlocking the key to the ancient race's power, and with it the hope that they could rewrite the balance of the galaxy in their own image. The excavation sites were now bustling with activity. Human scientists, engineers, and soldiers all worked together in a frantic pace, each team focused on a different area of the planet's surface, analyzing what had been uncovered and developing new systems to unlock further relics. At the same time, the fleet remained in orbit, ready to support the ground teams at a moment's notice. Though they were no longer operating in secret, their successes had made them bold, and now they openly traded discoveries, with one another swapping knowledge across their ships and stations, eager to push forward and claim more of the planet's secrets. Every hour the humans grew more adept at using the ancient technologies, which were increasingly being integrated into their own machines. The AI systems that had once been a mystery were now cooperating with human engineers and adapting to the needs of their crews, while other species struggled to comprehend the relics. The humans simply adapted, finding ways to utilize the technologies that others thought impossible. It was as if the planet itself had chosen humanity as its inheritor, for they were the ones able to harness the power and make it their own. At the same time, tensions grew higher among the alien fleets. The initial skepticism that humanity would even survive the planet's harsh environment had given way to an uncomfortable realization that the humans were winning. They were mastering the ancient technology faster than anyone had predicted, and the fear among the more established species began to grow. What if humanity unlocked the full power of the ancients before anyone else had the chance? They were not simply scavengers, now they were becoming a threat to the established order. As they started to apply the relics in ways that gave their ships an advantage, they began outmatching some of the alien vessels in combat simulations. Already, the ships equipped with alien tech had begun to exceed expectations. They were faster, more efficient, and more deadly than before. Humanity had found a way to make the ancient power work for them, and they were doing so with an audacity that none of the galaxy's older races had expected or respected. The largest fleets of the galaxy gathered in orbit now, a stark reminder of humanity's trespassing. They did not simply watch anymore. Now they began to coordinate their efforts to secure the planet's surface. The tension in the air was palpable. It was no longer a race of discovery. It had become a standoff, a battle for control with the ancient legacy. The fleets of the galaxy watched each other closely, waiting for someone to make a move. The humans had proven they could uncover the planet's secrets faster than anyone else. But would they be able to hold on to what they found? Would they be able to defend the power they had uncovered? Or would the established powers strike before they were ready? Humanity's leaders were not blind to the mounting pressure. They knew they were walking a fine line between discovery and conflict. Their fleet had become a symbol of their drive and ingenuity, but they were also a target. The other species would not let them take the power without a fight, and soon they would need to decide whether to continue their search for the ultimate prize or to prepare for the inevitable clash. With the might of the galaxy's greatest empires, the humans could no longer hide in the shadows. The galaxy was watching them, waiting to see if they could handle what they had discovered, or if they would be crushed by the weight of it all. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, something unexpected happened. An enormous surge of energy erupted from deep beneath the planet's surface. It was as if the planet itself had awakened, and for the first time in millennia, it sent a signal to the galaxy, a pulse that reverberated through the stars. And energy, unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. It was a warning and an invitation all at once, a promise of unimaginable power, but also a challenge to those who dared to claim it. The ancient race was no longer dormant. They had been watching all along, and now they had chosen to reveal themselves to those who would dare to rise up and seize their legacy. The pulse of energy from the planet sent shockwaves through the galaxy, rippling outward with such force that every fleet in the system felt it in their hulls. The surge was unlike anything they had encountered before. An ancient power had awakened, and it was calling them forward, but the call was not one of invitation. It was a challenge, a test, to see who would rise to claim the legacy that lay buried beneath the surface of the forgotten world. Humanity's ships rocked in the wake of the pulse, but they did not falter. Their crews were ready for this moment. They had no idea what had just been unleashed, but they knew they could not back down now. The other fleets were already adjusting their strategies. They had no choice but to follow the signal's trail and converge on the planet. Once more, all eyes turned to humanity, the upstarts who had unexpectedly advanced so quickly, and now the galaxy would see if they were worthy of the power they had uncovered. The alien fleets began moving with precision toward the planet, descending into orbit with military coordination ships of every size and function, all arriving at once. The greatest powers of the galaxy were here, and they would not allow humanity to take what they had spent centuries dreaming of. The humans had not yet unlocked the full potential of the planet's mysteries, but their rapid progress made them a direct threat to the established order. The stakes were clear now. It was no longer about discovery, it was about control. The prize could not be shared. Humanity could not be allowed to surpass the more ancient species so easily, and so the other fleets began preparing for a showdown. The tension in the air was thick. It was a standoff that felt inevitable. But humanity was not intimidated. They had come this far by pushing beyond every obstacle they had faced. And they would not stop now. They continued their excavation efforts, uncovering deeper and more complex relics from the ruins. As they ventured farther into the heart of the planet, the hum of their ships became an almost rhythmic beat as their engineers and soldiers worked in tandem to adapt to the newly unlocked technology. Each discovery fueled their resolve. Humanity was learning faster than ever before. They could feel the potential of the ancient technology building within them, and they understood that they were close to something monumental, a power that could change everything. And as they worked, they also began to build their defenses. They knew the moment was coming when they would need to protect what they had uncovered from those who would take it by force. But the other species were not content to wait any longer. Their leaders were growing impatient, and the first shots were fired not from humanity's ships, but from the alien fleets. It was a warning shot fired across the bows of the human ships, a declaration that they were no longer welcome in the system. The galaxy's empires had spoken, and they would not allow humanity to claim the power of the ancient race without a fight. The moment of diplomacy had passed, and now the stage was set for a galactic conflict. Humanity responded quickly, their ships powered up with the new technology, their weapons glowing with energy, drawn from the relics they had uncovered. They didn't hesitate. They had no time for hesitation. They had worked too hard to reach this point, to be intimidated by the might of the alien fleets. They launched their first volley at the approaching ships, an energy pulse that shattered the calm of the system and tore through the hulls of the alien vessels. They were unprepared for the force that humanity could now wield, and the galaxy watched as the humans stood their ground. The shockwave of energy from the initial exchange sent ripples through the fleets, but humanity's ships held firm. They were faster than before, more agile, more lethal. The weapons they had uncovered allowed them to outmaneuver the larger alien vessels. With ease, humanity's resolve had been tested, and now they were fighting for their right to claim what they had found. And the galaxy had to recognize them for the first time. They were not the underdogs, they were not the newcomers, they were a force to be reckoned with. The battle raged as the alien fleets responded with full force, their ships large and imposing, but still unable to match the speed and precision of the humans. They were fighting not only for technology, but for survival. The human fleet had become a symbol of defiance, of resilience, and of ambition. And though the battle was only just beginning, it was clear that humanity would not yield. They would fight for the legacy they had uncovered and for their place among the stars. The battle between humanity and the alien fleets escalated with every passing moment. The skies above the ancient planet were torn apart by the flash of weapons fire and the pulse of energy weapons that rattled the very foundations of space itself. The once calm and silent system had become a war zone. Humanity's ships danced through the chaos, dodging blasts that could turn a starship to dust. In an instant, their small, agile vessels now moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, their crews united by a singular purpose: to protect what they had discovered and to secure their place in the galaxy. As the battle raged, the alien fleets struggled to adapt to the speed and ferocity of their opponents. Their ships were massive and powerful, but they were slow to react to the unpredictable tactics humanity had employed. The aliens had expected a war of attrition, one where superior numbers and firepower would overwhelm the upstart species. They had not counted on humanity's ability to innovate on the fly, to adapt and turn the ancient technology they had uncovered into a weapon of incredible power. Humanity had not only learned from the ruins, they had made them their own, and now the galaxy was witnessing the result of that transformation. From the surface of the planet, the ground teams continued to dig, uncovering relics that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. Each new discovery was a double-edged sword. Though it offered more power, it also attracted more attention. Humanity had learned quickly that there were forces at work on the planet that were not entirely within their control. The deeper they went into the ruins, the more unstable the energy became. Strange phenomena began to manifest across the surface. The air shimmered with unnatural light, and the ground trembled as if the very planet itself was waking up from a long slumber. The human commanders were aware of this, but they knew they had little choice but to push forward if they were to secure the full power of the ancients before the alien fleets overwhelmed them. Above the planet, the battle raged on. The alien ships had regrouped and were now attacking with a level of coordination that spoke of years of experience. The air was thick with the hum of energy shields and the crackle of weapons fire as the sky became a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. Humanity's ships zipped through the chaos, returning fire with pinpoint accuracy, their new weapons streaking through the void and hitting their targets with devastating effect. Even the largest alien ships began to show signs of damage as humanity's firepower proved to be more than they had expected. A series of explosions rippled across the hulls of one of the alien capital ships, its shields faltering under the concentrated barrage. Humanity had launched the first successful assault on a fleet that was believed to be invincible, and the shock of that success sent a ripple through the other alien ships. Their commanders knew that their superiority was being challenged in ways they had not anticipated. On the ground, the human teams were making remarkable progress. Despite the chaos above them, their engineers were starting to unlock the final pieces of the ancient technology. They could feel the power pulsing beneath their feet as they connected the last of the ancient relics to their ships and systems. It was a race against time. The aliens were closing in, and the energy on the planet was becoming more volatile. The deeper the humans went, the more unstable it became. It was as though the planet itself was responding to their presence, to their relentless pursuit of power and knowledge. Humanity could feel the shift in the air. The ground itself seemed to hum with an unseen force, and they knew that they were about to cross a threshold, one that would change everything. But they also knew that the moment they crossed it, there would be no turning back. As the alien ships regrouped and prepared for another offensive, humanity's fleet held firm, their resolve unwavering. They had already proven that they could match the alien forces in battle. Now they needed to finish the task. They had started. Their final push toward the core of the ancient ruins was underway, their fleets and ground teams working together in perfect unison. They were no longer the underdogs they had once been. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy was starting to realize that the balance of power was shifting. As the final wave of the alien fleets moved into position, humanity made its move. The full might of their fleet descended upon the remaining alien ships. Their weapons, now enhanced by the ancient technology they had unlocked, the battle reached its peak. With every blast, humanity's ships cut through the enemy ranks one by one. The once proud alien ships crumbled before the overwhelming might of the human forces. And just as the final fleet was on the brink of collapse, the planet's energy surged once again, this time not as a pulse, but as an overwhelming wave of power that swept across the battlefield. The planet itself seemed to react to the humans' claim to the ancient legacy, sending a signal to the entire galaxy. This was humanity's moment, and with it came the undeniable truth: they had earned their place among the stars. The wave of energy that erupted from the planet was unlike anything seen before. It cascaded across the battlefield like a shockwave of pure power. It swept through space, engulfing everything in its path. The alien fleets could do nothing to stop it. Their shields flared and flickered as the raw force of the ancient power tore through their ranks. Humanity's ships, however, were different. Their vessels had adapted to the energy they had unlocked. They had become vessels of this power, not merely users of it, and as the wave rolled over them, their ships glowed brightly, absorbing the energy flowing from the planet itself. Their weapons pulsed with renewed intensity, and the once mighty alien fleets began to falter, their ships shattered under the strain of the unknown energy. They had no way of resisting it, that ancient technologies, unable to counter the force that humanity had now claimed for themselves. The battle had reached its climax, and the outcome was now inevitable. Humanity's forces held the upper hand. Their ships streaked through the remaining alien lines, their weapons cutting through the enemy fleet with brutal precision. The other species had underestimated humanity's resolve. They had underestimated the human ability to adapt, to survive, and now they were paying the price. But this was not just a victory of technology, it was a victory of will. Humanity had fought for this moment with every ounce of determination, and now the galaxy was forced to reckon with the truth that no longer could they be ignored. Humanity had earned its place at the table of the stars, and no one could deny it. As the final alien ships were reduced to floating debris, humanity's fleet took a moment to regroup. The remnants of the alien forces are retreating in disarray, their once imposing presence now reduced to nothing more than broken hulls and scattered wreckage. The human ships hovered in the void for a moment, their crews taking stock of the situation. The planet beneath them hummed with energy, the ruins now fully uncovered as the final piece of the ancient puzzle had been unlocked. Humanity stood victorious, but they knew this was only the beginning. On the surface of the planet, the excavation teams moved quickly, their efforts now focused on stabilizing the technology they had uncovered. They worked tirelessly to integrate the ancient systems into their own tech, their engineers constantly adjusting and recalibrating to ensure that the energy they had tapped into remained under control. It was a delicate balance. The energy from the planet was powerful but volatile, and it was clear that the deeper they went into the ruins, the more dangerous it became. Yet humanity had no choice. They had to master the power of the ancients before anyone else could, even if it meant pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They had come this far, and there was no turning back. In orbit above the planet, the surviving alien fleets had retreated to a safe distance, their commanders now silent as they watched humanity claim the prize that they had all sought for so long. The events of the past few weeks had shaken them to their core. They had not expected a species so young to challenge their dominance. So fiercely, humanity had risen from obscurity to become the most formidable force in the galaxy in the span of only a few short years. And now they had something more than just technology. They had something that could change the course of history. The galaxy itself was changing in ways that no one could have predicted before the war. With the alien fleets, humanity had been a forgotten species relegated to the fringes of the stars. Now, they stood at the center of a new order. They had proven themselves in battle and claimed the power of the ancients for themselves. They were no longer outsiders. They were the inheritors of a legacy that had been lost to time, and they were determined to make sure it would not be forgotten again. Humanity's leaders stood together on the command bridge of their flagship, watching the alien fleets retreat into the distance. They had won, but they knew the victory was not without cost. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the other species would not soon forget the challenge humanity had posed. They would be watched, they would be tested again and again, but humanity was ready. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. They had earned their place among the stars, and now they would defend it, no matter what the future held, no matter how many battles they had to fight. They would rise to meet them with the same determination and courage that had brought them this far. The ancient planet now belonged to humanity, and with it came the knowledge that they were no longer just another species in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. The legacy of the ancients was now in their hands, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity stood on the edge of a new era. Their ships hovered in orbit around the planet, their engines humming with the power of the ancient technology they had uncovered. The once proud fleets of the alien species had retreated, but their defeat was not the end of the conflict. It was only the beginning. Humanity had proven that they could hold their own against the galaxy's most powerful empires. But the war had revealed something more than just their ability to fight. It had revealed the galaxy's deep-seated fear of them. Now they were a force unlike any other, and their existence would no longer be ignored. The leaders of humanity knew this better than anyone. They had won the battle, but they had also made enemies. The other species might have been forced to retreat for now, but they would regroup, and they would come back. The power they had uncovered was too valuable to be left in the hands of those they had once considered beneath them. Humanity's rapid ascent had sent shockwaves across the galaxy, and many were still trying to process what had just happened. There were whispers in the corridors of power across the galaxy, rumors of new alliances being forged among the alien species, alliances that were focused solely on one thing: the destruction of humanity and the reclaiming of the ancient power humanity had claimed as their own. Despite this looming threat, humanity was not deterred. Their resolve had only grown stronger. The war had shown them that they were capable of more than they had ever dreamed, and they knew that they were ready to face whatever came next. Their leaders gathered in council, ready to take the next step in their evolution. The first thing on the agenda was to solidify their claim to the planet and its secrets. They had to ensure that the ancient technology was used responsibly and that they could control the power they had tapped into before anyone else could take it from them. The engineers and scientists worked around the clock on this task, tweaking the systems and adjusting the energy flows. They could feel the planet's energy pulsing beneath their feet, a reminder of the immense power they now wielded. But there was also an awareness of the danger it posed to them and to the galaxy itself if misused. While the leaders worked to secure their hold on the planet, the rest of humanity was focused on the future. They had already begun the process of expanding their influence across the galaxy. With the ancient technology they had uncovered, they were able to build new ships at an unprecedented rate, and their fleets began to grow larger and more powerful with each passing day. They were no longer just a fledgling species struggling to survive in the fringes of space. They were now a thriving empire capable of challenging the greatest powers of the galaxy. Their ships could outmaneuver the largest fleets. Their weapons could match or even exceed the deadliest of alien technologies. And their people had proven themselves to be among the most resilient in the galaxy. They had overcome every obstacle thrown their way, and now they were ready to take their place among the stars as equals. But even as they expanded their reach, new challenges began to surface. Humanity had become a beacon of hope to some and a symbol of fear to others. Their rapid growth and newfound power were not universally welcomed. There were those who feared what humanity could become with the ancient technology at their disposal, and they were beginning to organize in secret. There were rumblings of rebellion and resistance movements forming across the galaxy in response to humanity's rise to power. Entire factions of alien species were beginning to rally against them, preparing for a conflict that many knew was inevitable. In the face of this growing unrest, humanity's leaders were divided on how to proceed. Some argued that they should focus on diplomacy, that they should use the power they had gained to forge alliances with other species and work toward a peaceful future. Others believed that humanity should take a more aggressive approach, that they should impose their will on the galaxy and crush any opposition before it could take root. The debate raged on, but one thing was clear: humanity was no longer just a player in the galaxy. They were a force that could not be ignored, and the fate of the galaxy itself now hinged on how humanity chose to wield the power they had claimed. On the surface of the ancient planet, the energy from the ruins continued to surge in waves. The planet itself had become a living testament to the power of the ancients and humanity's connection to it. But even as they celebrated their victory, they knew that they had only begun to scratch the surface of what lay buried beneath the planet's crust. The true nature of the relics had not yet been fully understood, and there was still so much left to uncover. And as the planet hummed with the energy of the ancients, humanity's engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to unlock its secrets. Their discovery of the ancient power had come at a great cost, but it was also the key to their future, and they would stop at nothing to understand it fully. The galaxy watched in silence as humanity began its journey into a new era. They had claimed the legacy of the ancients, but what would they do with it? Would they become the galaxy's rulers, or would they be crushed under the weight of their own ambition? The answers were still unclear, but one thing was certain: humanity had arrived, and they were not going anywhere. They had earned their place among the stars, and the galaxy would have to reckon with them, whether it liked it or not. The galaxy was in flux. Humanity's rise had shaken the foundations of the known universe. The delicate balance of power that had held sway for eons was now in disarray. The galaxy's empires watched as humanity expanded its influence with breathtaking speed. Their ships were everywhere, their presence undeniable, and their growing power made them both a symbol of hope and a looming threat to all those who had once believed they ruled the stars. The ancient planet, now firmly in humanity's grasp, was a beacon of that power. Its energy pulsed like a heart, and as long as humanity controlled it, the balance of the galaxy would remain uncertain. Across the stars, tensions were rising. The alien species that had once considered humanity a fleeting nuisance were now faced with a cold reality. They were no longer the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. Humanity had taken their place as a force to be reckoned with. The first shockwaves of rebellion began to stir as factions within the galaxy's empires called for action against humanity. Alliances began to form in secret as the ancient power continued to grow. Humanity's enemies feared that if they didn't strike soon, they would be too late. They had underestimated the humans for too long, and now they would not make that mistake again. But humanity was not simply preparing to defend its newfound power, it was also preparing to take the next step forward, to push the boundaries of what was possible, and to reshape the galaxy in its own image. Humanity's leaders knew the stakes were higher than ever before. They had won the battle for the planet, but the war for the future of the galaxy was far from over. The other species would not back down. They would not allow humanity to rule without a challenge, and the question that loomed over them was how far they were willing to go to defend their place among the stars. The path ahead was uncertain and full of peril. But the one thing humanity had learned from the ancient legacy was that it was not afraid of the unknown. They had proven that they could adapt, that they could rise to any challenge, and now they had the means to change the very fabric of the galaxy itself. On the surface of the ancient planet, the excavations continued deep into the heart of the ruins. The energy from the relics was growing stronger, and humanity's scientists were beginning to unlock its most profound secrets. They had discovered mechanisms that were not just technological, but philosophical too. The ancient race had left behind knowledge that transcended mere machines. It was a blueprint for how the galaxy could evolve, how civilizations could advance, not just in power, but in understanding the universe and their place within it. The question now was how humanity would use this knowledge. Would they follow the path set before them by the ancients, or would they forge a new path entirely, one that was uniquely their own? The energy from the planet continued to surge, pulsing through humanity's fleet and its infrastructure that had become a new breed of civilization, one powered by the relics of an ancient race. The power was intoxicating, but it was also dangerous. They had learned to control it for now, but there were no guarantees that they would always be able to keep it in check. As humanity reached further into the galaxy, they could feel the weight of the decisions they were making. They could feel the eyes of the galaxy upon them, waiting to see what kind of rulers they would become. Would they be conquerors or peacemakers? Would they use the power they had gained to impose their will on the galaxy, or would they offer a new way forward, one built on the principles of unity? And understanding the fate of the galaxy was in their hands, and humanity was still trying to figure out what kind of legacy they wanted to leave behind. They had proven they were capable of greatness, but with that greatness came responsibility. Back in the heart of the galaxy, the alien empires were regrouping. Their leaders knew they could not allow humanity to continue its rise unchecked. They had tried diplomacy, but humanity had already shown that it was not afraid of conflict. The galaxy was on the brink of war, and every species had to decide where they stood. Would they stand with humanity, or would they oppose it? The alliances being formed were fragile at best, and in the shadows, there were those who secretly hoped that humanity's rise would falter, that the ancient power would slip through their fingers, and that the galaxy could return to the old ways, the ways of their rule. The old empires had not counted on humanity's resilience, and now they were beginning to realize just how deeply their power had been shaken. Humanity's leaders met again in secret as the galaxy's tension grew thicker every day. The decisions they made now would shape the future of the stars. They had proven they could survive, they had proven they could fight, and they had proven that they could rise above the challenges of their enemies. But now they had to decide if they would use their power to conquer or to build something better. The ancient technology offered them the chance to reshape the galaxy, to push beyond the limits that had been imposed on them. But with that power came an even greater responsibility, one that humanity was still grappling with. As the stars burned overhead, the future of the galaxy remained uncertain. The rise of humanity had changed everything, but whether that change would be for good or ill was a question only time would answer. What was clear, though, was that humanity had not just survived the galaxy's test, it had transformed it, and the galaxy would never be the same again.